no less significant than any of our other Welsh late medievalists, but probably more important because of her gender. Her gender is the poet Gwerful Mechain. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I think it is. Gwerful Mechain was a very strong poet of the 15th century in Wales, and a very strong feminist, if you will. Her poetry, often quite risque, while also being quite devout at different turns and sometimes within the same poem. Her poetry celebrates femininity as a kind of reclamation process. She upbraids some of her contemporaries and fellow poets who celebrate the ideal beauty of womanhood, praising all the little characteristics of the female body, the golden hair and the alabaster skin and all of those tropes. But she says, "Well, okay, let's look at all of it. It's all good." And you can't help but contrast that to the poets, let's say, to the Pearl poet or the poet of Sir Gawain, who had a kind of reverential, idealized portrait of woman. And this is saying, well, no, let's get the whole thing in there. And well, she does. And in so doing, introduces a really unique perspective into poetry of the age. Her most famous, her most notorious poem is one specifically titled "Poem to the Vagina." She celebrates her vagina as something that, again, other poets, male poets primarily, celebrate many different aspects of femininity. She's saying, no, let's talk about what it really is. And it is written in a very traditional meter, very traditional scheme. It conforms to all of the stylistics of the day, but it offers a distinct perspective, let's say. And you can hear in her voice also a bit of that character of a poet raised in a tavern instead of a monastery, or in her case, a nunnery. The voice is somewhat aggressive. It is somewhat competitive. She is very much trying to be obviously in your face with her work and demanding some recognition. Not unlike, let's say, a poet who is trying to attract attention in a tavern or in a body. Any body venue where there are a bunch of guys swaggering around there, and she's saying, "No, I can show some swagger." There is a certain bravada in here, and there's a lot of fun too. But within a body of work that is remarkably intense. Every poet, drunken fool, thinks he's just the king of cool. Every one is such a bore, he makes me sick, I'm so demure. He always declaims fruitless praise of all the girls in his male gaze. He's at it all day long, by God, ignoring the best bit, silly sod. He praises the hair, the gown of fine love, and all the girls' bits up above. Even lower down he praises merrily the eyes which glance so sexily. Daring more, he lauds the lovely shape of the soft breasts, which leave him all agape. And the beauty's arms, bright drape, even her perfect hands do not escape. Then with his finest magic, before night falls, it's tragic, he pays homage to God's might, an empty eulogy. It's not quite right. For he's left the girl's middle unpraised, that place where children are conceived, the warm, bright quim he does not sing, that tender, plump, pulsating, broken ring. That's the place I love, the place I bless, the hidden quim beneath her dress. You, female body, you're strong and fair, a faultless fleshy court plumed with hair. I proclaim that the quim is fine, circle of broad-edged lips divine, a cunt there by a lavish arse, table of song with its double in red. And the churchmen all, the radiant saints, when they get the chance, they've no restraint. They'll never miss their chance to steal by Saint Bueno to give it a good feel. So I hope you feel well and truly told off. All you proud male poets, you dare not scoff. Let songs to the quim grow and thrive, find their due reward and survive. For it is a silky soft, the sultan of an ode, a little seam, a curtain on a niche bestowed, neat flaps in a place of meaning, the sour grove, circle of greeting, superb forest, faultless gift to squeeze, fur for a fine pair of balls, tender frieze, dingle deeper than hand or ladle, hedge to hold a penis as large as you're able, a girl's thick glade, it is full of love, lovely bush, you are blessed by God above. Uh, I don't know what to say about that. That is in a very explicit literary way. It is a response to the Daffodil Gwilym poem to the penis. Obviously, this is a kind of bookend to that. But it's also a strong assertion of femininity, of womanhood, and a very physical one. She is taking the image of woman out of the ideal and bringing it down to something that is human. She is celebrating humanity, not a divine quality of physicality, but physicality itself. Yes, she gets a little bit arch with it and celebrates it into a realm of the ideal, perhaps. But I think that's all just in good fun. There's an earthiness to this. There is a physicality to this, and it is significantly quite defiant in its feminist assertions. The voice is you get the feeling the voice is of some resentment of being overlooked. Not necessarily, getting prudish or shrewish about it in any way, but just demanding, okay, this is good too, and you gotta admire it. There's some real fun there. The feminist theme of her work runs through many different iterations, and it is prominent in pretty much all of her poems. One of the more interesting is when she addresses to jealous wives, and the voice here is always a little uncertain whether she is upbraiding jealous wives who are perhaps looking askance at the local single woman, widow or whatever, who might be fooling off with the men, or if it is an attack on the wives themselves. It's a little uncertain there, but there is a certain mockery in the tone, regardless, while at the same time humanizing and developing and granting some legitimacy to each perspective. Jealousy is the strangest attitude. It's no good thinking that everyone's lewd. When you consider it's really not nice. You might even say it's a terrible vice, but wives take on this inconvenient stance. They're so suspicious, they look at me askance. What is it in their nature, tell me please, makes them act so, never at their ease? My friend Gwenllian told me one time that she'd heard sung a dirty old rhyme that said it wasn't love on which women are sold, that yearning which thrives on unreachable gold, but what really gets women going, bless their little cotton socks, is, pardon me for saying it, the love of good big cocks. Don't get her up. Just believe me when I say all these Mr. Bigs are after me, desperate for a lay. But those damn wives, so respectable, won't give up their cocks delectable. Though they follow a girl in the field, not an inch from their hand will they yield. They're not having any, come what may, not for the price, not by the night, not by the day. The jealous wife won't share the fun. She won't do a deal with anyone. Oh, heck, it really is a pain. This girl simply knows no shame. What she likes best is a big cock and a good lay. It means more to her than her family any day. Her own father and 8 of her relations, all her jewels and her fashionable creations, even her mother, I am sad to say, and her brothers, cousins, sisters all away. It's a tough old world when a common old garden dick strips a woman of her senses. It could really make you sick. I know that libel is distinctly unsavory, but it's envy that causes it. Don't you agree? For there's a blight on this, my country, and that heavy weight is jealousy. Every marketplace, it's just bad news. Wrangling over cock gives us the blues. Some say a pretty girl would sooner than give up her very own Peter, sacrifice 18 of the landlord's cows, or even the oxen that pulls the plows, or an entire flock of sheep so rash, or the estate, the buildings, and the cash, or even her own pussy. Would you believe? All the pans in her kitchen, you can't conceive the trivet they stand on, but not her naked post. Rather her headdress and finery be forever lost, and her worldly goods, whatever the cost. And let me tell you at the end of my song, this satire's not for her who wants a bigger than average dong. Excuse me. It's a fun little tavern type poem again, but it obviously has an edge, and it is critiquing the shying away from sexuality again. It is saying that all of these women who are wives. They are, because they are walling off their own sexuality, their own access to bodily pleasure, for whatever reason, they are perhaps forcing men to go astray outside the marriage. The focus, well, again, you can argue it a couple of different ways on what she's doing here, but I would say the focus is very much on the simple joy of pleasure, or the physicality of it, and saying, why are you bothering? But not only that, it's causing dissension. That because we are so focused on men, on the male aspects of this, we're letting it divide all of us as women. We are letting jealousy and envy seep into our lives and spoil our lives when we can get along. It's an interesting little social critique buried within another very funny poem. Her attitude towards men is appreciative often, but also somewhat defiant. she clearly bristles at the role of demure woman. And she takes on, from time to time, some of the notable restrictions on women and what people are supposed to expect of women, and the unspoken traditions and culture about how a man treats a wife. A remarkable, very short lyric uh, is addressed to her husband for beating her. A dagger through your heart's stone, on a slant to reach your breastbone. May your knees break, your hands shrivel, and the sword plunge in your guts to make you snivel. Okay, that's bracing. That is shocking, almost. That is going to give men pause, perhaps. That threat, that promise of violence, that is quite terrifying, quite frankly. And the freedom with which she declares it, the insistence that I can make a poem about that. Yeah, I saw my friend walking around with bruises on her face, and I know who did it. She only ever sees one person. Do that to my friend again, and well, this is what you might expect. And that visceral approach about discussing the angle at which a blade will slice into your chest, on a slant to reach your breastbone. Yikes. And the guts to make you snivel. Something becomes so pathetic. Just, it is it's an image of power. It's an image of defiance. It is, okay, if you want to get Freudian about it, a reclamation of the aggressive male token, of a dagger for, as opposed to, well, okay, you're beating up my friend, maybe you raped her too, so I'm going to rape you with this. It's bracing. She has a lot of devotional stuff as well. And that is really interesting. She gets in a lot of back and forth poetry slams, if you will, with other poets. She was very much, obviously, embedded within her poetic culture. Again, probably more of a tavern culture than anything like the nunnery or it's certainly anything like a school. But the little ones tend to amuse me the most. They're the most vibrant, and they're the least buried in symbolism and all of these literary devices, where the voice really comes out, and you can really get a sense of how she is approaching. How she is basically stepping right up to the threshold of humanism in history. She'll write about just about anything in a joy for the recognition of, appreciation of, and joy of simple physicality, ripping the spirit of poetry out of the elevated realms that it has been throughout the medieval ages, and bringing it right down into some very often quite silly, but often quite recognizable and understandable realms. Number 14, to her maid as she shits. She squats and lets out her water, cascading from the cauldron of her pants as she totters. Her twin holes make a great bubbling clamor. Then comes the dung and a rainbow arch of water. Writing a poem about a young girl sitting, squatting, and defecating. It's human. Everybody poops. The idea of writing a poem about it, however, is perhaps somewhat unusual, somewhat unfamiliar, something unique. But why? Why deny that? Certainly in the classical age before her, there were some interesting examples of just simple putting it out there and saying, okay, this is part of the poetic project too. This is fair game. I should be allowed to write a poem about this. And so they do. It's a fun little ditty. All of these, by the way, all of these poems are written in very regular rhyme schemes that, in the original Welsh, I cannot pronounce or read in any way. But even in this very fine translation, there's a sense of the fun. The rhyme is managed pretty well so that it has this sing-songy quality. Again, a kind of a tavern song bit where it is celebrating human fun, quite frankly. Physicality, the joy of being just a little risque, just a little bit disgusting from time to time. She's not afraid to work blue, as comics would say. Because of all of that, she really shines within the era. Standing alongside near contemporaries like Daffod ap Gwilym, Chaucer, the Pearl Poet. All of these are creating this huge. All of these characters are creating this huge tapestry of very rich culture in Great Britain that is just edging towards the Renaissance, and for some people argue it's already there because these themes have already started to bubble up, and the recognition of the value, the poetic and philosophical value of humanity and all of human material existence, that is there. So historians and art critics will argue this way and that way about, well, when did the Renaissance start? It's here.